Welcome, everybody. We have a full room. This is Dr. Alana James. For those of you that don't know me, I am the founder and CEO of MastersNet and DoctoralNet, and we sell platforms and apps to universities to help graduate students have an easier time. Today is a discussion about academic writing. I am an author, and it never gets easier, but it does get to where you have systems underneath you and you do the system step by step and things progress. So a huge portion of the change is the way we think about things, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Our reflective question that we will keep coming back to all the way through today is, who is the most important reader of your writing? And the answer to that question will change every time you write. And then once you have that person in your mind, you want to ask yourself, what would be needed? How can you ensure that you give that reader what they, and then there are four things: what they expect, what they want, what they're interested in, and when things are very good, what they hope for. So with that reflective question going over and over and over through our conversation today, you'll get a sense of how that works. And hopefully by the end of the day, it will be second nature. Our goals are to go through several types of academic writing, to discuss how we might answer those reflective questions, and then to discuss the findings and the use of the models for each. So we're going to critically analyze several, I call them models. They're not necessarily chosen because they're perfect, but because I could get them and because they had some variety amongst them, so that we can critically analyze them. And then we'll discuss, and then there's a bit of discussion right now that I'd ask for with the people in the room. Type in a sentence or two. Why do you think people read? Why do people read? So I anticipate a variety of answers will start popping up. Why do people read? Welcome, Sean. People read to be informed, because reading can inspire. And we can reflect, we can think to gain more knowledge. For entertainment, absolutely. We can't deny that we read for entertainment. Sometimes to validate their own opinions. Ooh, that's a loaded one. Sometimes to open up to new ideas, to communicate. A combination of learning to improve knowledge in our areas of study or research. All really good answers. We have to think about why people are reading what we are writing. So I'll also lay out there that when you're a master's student and you're writing your final thesis or dissertation, or when you're a doctoral student and you're writing your final document, the people reading it are reading it because they are paid to, and they are paid to make sure that there aren't weaknesses in it. So you need to know what weaknesses there might be and know how to solve them. So it's a good question. Why are the people you're writing for reading what you do? And all the other things are true too. They don't diminish just because it's a multiple or complex answer. Our agenda for today is to go through models. We're going to look at an essay, a journal article, a master's thesis, and PhD thesis, although we'll put those together. And then we're going to talk a little bit about where else you might go to dig deeper. So getting started. And I'm going to, you're going to find that I repeat myself a little bit when I start, when you see a new slide that looks something like this, because we're going to cut today's down into snippets on each number. So If it sounds a little repetitive, that's what's happening. So our first snippet on writing from models is a general discussion on everyday writing. What are just a general conversation. And our reflective question, which we'll see over and over, is who is the most important reader? And how can you ensure that you give that reader what they expect, what they want, what they're interested in, and what they're hoped for? Well, when you write, you are funneling your reader. Every document that we read has some kind of a funnel going on in it. If it's confusing, if it's hard to read, that funnel is probably not as tight as it could be. And if you look at the funnel and you think in terms of what do people expect, that's got to be the first part. What do they want? What are they interested in? And then when we're good, we get the very tiniest part of the funnel where we're funneling in just spectacularly well-written new ideas, provocative ideas, and that's what readers hope for. So in academic writing, our model is background, literature, methodology, results, findings, discussion, and conclusion. And if you don't know that, if it isn't yet kind of wired into your spine, it will be as part of graduate education. So just write it down now. That's the order. Remember that the first question is, what do people expect? So when they pick up your scientific writing, they expect to see that there's going to be these pieces, and they're going to go more or less in this order. They want for those areas to be clear, to transition well, to flow well. What they're interested in is your ideas and the specifics. That'll show up mostly in when you talk about results and findings. And what they hope for is that their time has been well spent, and when they come through this, they have been given new ideas. So that's your goal. And the more patterned you are when you start in just laying down I always start my documents actually with a funnel. And I think about what are the different things I'm going to put in each part. And as I go through the writing, I revise the funnel till I work through this pattern. Looking into the room, Adrienne says that just another reason people read is to see where our own thoughts go and how they stand in the larger context of literature in the field. So it's a communication. And Adrienne asks, aren't these the chapters of a dissertation? They are. Most, and I have to just say for those of you in different parts of the world, dissertation, word for the PhD level, doctoral level work in the United States. The rest of the world calls it a thesis. Master's level in the US is called a thesis. Most of the rest of the world calls it a dissertation. So if those two words seem confusing, it's the final document of whatever level you are writing for. And even if you are not doing research per se, even if you don't have methodology, you will have background, you will have literature, you will have results from your ideas, you will have a discussion. So that system, and if you're doing a 5-chapter dissertation or thesis and you're going for a PhD, you will probably have conclusion and findings written together. And those documents might be 7 or 8 chapters. And the reason that happens is because things went on in the research that demanded that you pull one of those things into 2 chapters. So for instance, you might have mixed methods, and then you might choose to help your reader out in the step-by-step process of going through your ideas, that you would have one results chapter for your qualitative work and one results chapter for your quantitative work, or things like that. You might pull your literature into the philosophical literature as well as the another kind of literature. These are the art form of the work when you're at the doctoral level. At the master's level, if you can just pin these steps in these places and draw a thread all the way through, you will be well on your way to giving your final reader what they expect and what they want. And then, of course, your ideas are what they're interested in and what they hope for. A lot of people in the room today. I don't want to leave anybody behind. Raise your hand if you are ready to move on. Give me some hint. If you had a question, does this all make sense? You have the basics? Because now we're going to layer on top of those basics. Excellent. Looks by so far where I think people are saying, voting yes, that was clear. Very good. Thank you all. Excellent to see so much. All right, so I want to make a note just before I move on about spreadsheets. They're very handy for several kinds of writing. And one of the things that makes them handy, the way we're using them today, is that you can compare and contrast models or things that you are tearing apart to critically analyze very easily. Put the pieces next to each other and you can see the similarities and differences. Next week, we're going to use them for capturing and organizing notes so you can easily pull your lit into what you write. But the tools that make spreadsheets so handy for writers are two. One is freeze panes. So freeze panes, you can type it into the top where it says, what do you want? You can look it up in your menus. It keeps either your top row or your left-hand column frozen, and you can then scroll back and forth. And so your notes are, or what you're doing where, can scroll with you. And the CSV file that you have today, which really ought to be an Excel file, it should have freeze panes. The other one, ability to sort by categorizing, has to do with the way you work with being able to sort things, put things under categories and then sort them A to Z, and everything in that category comes up to the top, even though sometimes there were holes that some authors didn't. And I'll talk more about that next week. So consider spreadsheets. Okay, now this, so we're starting now the next snippet, which is looking at journal articles critically. And you should have your Excel or CSV file, and it should have a setting that says journal articles. And there is a resource link there. If that isn't working for you, that's a PDF link that actually I didn't test. So I hope that all 4 sheets come up in the PDF. And we're going to tear apart a journal article. 2 journal articles, actually. Remembering our reflective questions: who's the most important reader, and what do they expect, want, interested in, and hope for? So let's think about that with journal articles. The most important reader for a journal article is someone else in your field. Secondary to that would be students in your field, because they're and the most important part, the thing they hope for, is that your article will lead directly into ideas they're concerned about. And in fact, if it's really good, tie in with what they're concerned about, they will cite you. And you hope for that as well. So you build authority. The more citations, the more people cite you. Especially in today's digital world, we all probably know how many times our different articles have been cited, if we pay attention to that kind of thing. So they expect the article to be written, and absolutely a journal article, you want to hold to that background, literature, methodology, results, and findings. Even though you may mess up which ones go where, sometimes all of them are going to be there. They want it to be clear. They want it to be non-redundant. They want it to be well written. But the peer review system will take care of any weaknesses you have there. They're interested in your ideas. They want to be really clear what's new and different about your ideas. And what they hope for is, as I said, something they can use themselves. So with that, turn to the page, which has these two, this system on it. And what I've done here is the left-hand side, which is the freeze panes, are referenced, so you can go find it yourself, the link to it. So that's for you to be able to go back and take a look and add to it and do your own critical analysis after. I chose one from education and one that's a STEM science piece for today, but you'll notice there's lots of open spaces on this spreadsheet. And as I said, I'd love to have you decide you wanted to go test out things in your field and then send them back to me. I'm making notes. Both of these use the standard background, lit, methods, results, findings, modality of writing. And I'll take you now through the organization of the documents and headings. So the first one's it's a critical race piece. The point of the article is to discuss storytelling as a way to put out in the world critical counter arguments against what is commonly in quotes known. And the article makes the point that there's such a body of literature about people of different races in education and why the statistics don't look even with the majority privileged white class statistics. And so how does, in that overbearing amount of quote unquote evidence, how do we make a case for something different? And these authors are saying that we tell stories. We tell really good stories, because stories stick with us, stay in our guts when theories and other things diminish. It's a powerful article. If it's of interest to you, I thought it was very well written. And so they take us through introduction, teaching us about racism, white privilege, storytelling. And then they take us through kinds of storytelling. That's the lit, social science of storytelling, and the building a counter story. They go through the methodology very carefully. And then they take us into the final outcome, which is that we have to pay attention, and that this is a really good system to help do that. Notice the last one, beginning, middle, end. I think it's very useful for you to look at how authors set us up as a reader, how they tell us things, and then how they close. Most academic authors set us up by telling us what we're going to experience. They take us through it step by step, and then at the end they tell us where we've been. It's a good, especially if you're just starting to write, it's a habit to adopt. And then if you find yourself moving away from it once you're an established author, good to go. But you're never going to get in trouble if you follow this. I'm telling you where we're going there, and then I'm going to tell you where we've gone. I jumped completely different kind of article for the neurology and neuroscience reports. It discusses the clinical management of Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, and the recent modifications to the diagnosis. So it's a very critical, heavily, the language is very medical, but it follows exactly the same kind of heading. Introduces us, takes us through the lit. It's a lit review, actually, so there isn't a particular methodology, And once again, the author told us where we were going, took us there, and got it done. I chose those two very different ones to get us started today, because I believe if you take this to your field, you're going to find more often than not that journal articles fall this. And most of you will at some point want to write in a journal, or consider that it would be very nice if your work got to that level and you had journal articles behind you, and this will give you a system to do that. Adrian suggests that journal editors are arguably very important readers. They're certainly well-read readers, and they have a lot of influence in conferences and other things as well. Very seldom are they just the journal. All right, and Cecilia asks, are the topics or layouts similar for journal article? Yes. The underlying what goes where. What does my reader need? So to answer Cecilia's question, we're going to go back to this document, looking at our funnel. Background is the top part of the funnel. The literature takes us into what is gone on in the field before. Then the methodology and the results are this, what people are interested in, how did you do your study, and then finally your final is what they hope for is that your results are importance to them. So the funnel works and the layouts here work, and that's why I started with journals. They very seldom stray from this particular kind of structure. Any other questions before we go on? Raise your hand if you have a question. I'll let you type. If I don't see any questions, we're going to look at master's and doctor's theses. Thank you. Okay, starting our next series, our next snippet, we're going to take master's final thesis and PhD final thesis together. Once again, they're on the resources tab of using the models, and they follow the same structure that we had been discussing. And so have open whichever you, in your looking at your document, whichever one is the right one for you. Who are the most important readers of your writing for these two documents? Well, for the student who wants to graduate, the most important reader is your committee or your whoever has the final check the box, you graduate when you turn it in. And for the PhD level or doctoral level, that's usually a committee of people, and then you're going to present to that committee. They're going to read it. They're going to make notes. You're going to present. At master's, it can be all over the ballpark what that final writing looks like, depending on your degree and whether it's a distributed degree and whether it's a professional or a graduate. So there won't be a particular, you must do it this way, but the most important reader there is the one who has set the standard that you have to meet in order for you to graduate. So I'm going to send you off, whether you're a master's or a doctoral, if you're at a university that has one of our subscriptions, you have under your accounts a tab called on-demand webinars. And there are two there. Starting your PhD with the end in mind and starting your master's with the end in mind. And they take what I'm about to do into much greater depth. And they help you find exactly the right models for your writing. But what you need is you need to absolutely understand the expectations your university has set up and your readers, whoever they are, have set up. They have very firm expectations. They are examining for those expectations. Then over and above that, they are interested in what you studied, how you studied it, etc. They want to be engaged with you. They also want to have very few mistakes or things that where they will cause you to do more work before you graduate. And what they hope for is really to be impressed. So the things that you can do along these lines for those readers are very important. Now, over and above that, your documents should have a life of their own afterwards. If you don't have if you're not at a university that has a place that gets it published, like ProQuest, you can publish it yourself. You can put it up in ResearchGate or academia.edu. You can do the publishing work to give it legs. And then who is your reader? Very much like the journal article. Your reader is someone else probably in your field, someone who's interested in your topic. They expect that it's tight work. They're interested in what you have to say more than the perfection of how it is said. They want to have their ideas expanded or, as one of you mentioned, verified, and they hope for it to be well done and their time spent with your document to have been a good use of time. So how do you get there? I'm just going to, these are very intense sheets because I've done this a couple of times. Both the master's and the doctoral, this is the master's page, have a lot of columns to them. Both documents follow, by and large, the same resulting headings. And what I did was I went to ProQuest Open, which is, you can find it easily on the web, and it's all the open documents from master's and doctoral work from universities all over the world, primarily the US, but all over the world. And you can pull down thesis and dissertations in your field, and then you can do what I did and list them out. And here are the links for the ones I did. And I chose different kinds of topics and different kinds of methodology, and I listed them across. And I'm not going to take a lot of time today pointing out the similarities between them, but there are some differences that are worthy to look into. If you go below the red line, there were some theses from different kinds of thesis that were set up quite differently. There was one that was on reverse engineering and software development. And so when it jumped into the lit, it went into the process of reverse engineering, and then they were relatively short, and then it jumped into machine coding, and as I remember, involved the reader in the code and how things went on. So this particular thesis, it's below the red line, it's the first one. You'll notice there's a lot of subheadings for chapters 4 or 5, and it goes into 6 and 7 too. So the point of the thesis was almost a step-by-step idea to someone else in the field who knows how to do reverse engineering into using different kinds of scripts and codes to do it. I think the important lesson there is this author messed with the structure because he knew exactly where he wanted to go in what they hoped for. Someone in his field would hope to have something they read take them into new depths of what they actually do. So he focused on the doing nature and shortened the background sections of it. And this takes me to the place where I want to remind all of you that academic writing, even though we have rules, it is an art form. And that funnel, we decide at the end where we are funneling our reader to go, and we have to do the right steps to get them there. In this case, shorten background lit methodology and take a strong and lot of distance and time into the results, the how-to and the results of the work. Something totally different is right next door. It's a thesis about religion, pluralistic religion, religion and nature. And then what this author did was take us, actually it's a historical piece. And so each chapter became a section of people in a certain period of time. And then those periods take us through the funnel to the main point, which is how the Ute tribe that was being discussed changed, how their religion changed as a result of what was going on around them. So I didn't want you to only think that things are written just one way, but better to know the structure and then mess with it consciously, because you understand where you want to take your reader and it makes sense, than to not be stuck. Really, you feel stuck at the time. You have a lot of writing to do and you don't quite have any idea how to get them there. The ones on top, much cleaner, much more. Here are the headings for chapter 1. Here are the headings for chapter 2, chapter 3. And if you read left to right, you'll see that the introduction gives us an idea of what's being studied, why it's important, sometimes tells us about the methodology, gives us a sense of why we're there as readers. Notice that one included the background with the lit review, just smushed the two chapters together. And so one of the models that we always recommend you get is from a finished piece from your university. Because within that, you'll know how much leeway with this basic structure you have. If everything from your university follows the party line, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4 all the time, then easiest for you to follow it as well. It's easier to go forward with new ideas and new structures after you've graduated rather than during. So from those of you in the room who are master's students, raise your hand if you have any questions before I jump into PhD land. No hands going up. No questions. Thank you, Tony. PhD docs, much the same, just longer. Probably average size for a dissertation or thesis is between 150 and 200 pages. And the purpose at the end is that you have an argument. You are, and just to say for those of you in different parts of the world, in the United States, I think 100%, by far the majority of you have to write chapters 1, 2, and 3, and then have some kind of a proposal hearing to have that signed off on by your committee, that you have good research questions and a doable research design, and that your ideas are significant enough to be worthy of study. At that point, you have a legal binding document with your university, and as long as you fulfill the requirements of that proposal, you will be allowed to graduate to their standards. That doesn't mean it can be poorly written or you can plagiarize or anything like that, but it means that what they can't do is your committee chair dies, they bring in a new person, and the new person has all these different ideas and tries to make you do 100 different things instead. Legally not possible in the United States because of this system. So it's a legally binding document, and that's the underarching reason that it goes on. Europe, very different. Most of the time in Europe, you have an idea, you work with that idea all the way through, somebody's watching you, you have to go through IRB, but you don't actually have to, and maybe you have to write sections, but you don't have to write it and have it defensible. That means that at the end, when you have your results and your findings, you have quite a bit of possible leeway, but also quite a bit of trauma, because you are retrofitting what actually happened and trying to make one coherent story out of it. Both strategies have strengths and weaknesses. From working with students on both sides of the pond, they both end up in pretty much the same place. And you are at the university you're at, and you'll go by the rules that you play under. So this particular format is set up to show you headings of these different documents. And so, and I made, in some cases, I think I tried to put the page numbers down too on this one so that you could see the differences between how many pages they wrote to do the different parts. Now, what I was trying to get to is that what the difference between a master's thesis and a PhD, other than the sheer quantity of work and the individual research aspect of it, is that while a master's thesis probably makes some points, it probably has some ideas, it hasn't held to the same standard usually of argument. And I'm only going to bring up the fact that there are parts to an argument. It makes a claim and you have to back the claim up in certain ways. But it's useful for you to know, and there are webinars on it. And it may be one of the things that as you move towards this, you want to do some deeper research into. Looking at this particular analysis, you'll see that I've highlighted some things in red. I'm not sure they showed. Oh, it's below what shows on the slide. On the methodology heading section, one of them put the limitations and delimitations, selection bias, missing data, validity and reliability discussion in the methodology. That's unusual. Another one took us through step-by-step details of the study. That was also unusual. And not bad, not wrong, made sense in the reason. I could see why the author did it, but I was trying to just point out the things here that weren't quite what you would see every day. And that's, again, to show the breadth and variety of all of you are doing your own research, or have your own ideas at the end. And the thing that makes academic work exciting is the fact that there are, within this rather formal structure, there are reasons that authors do different things. There are reasons that you might think your reader needs to have this section now rather than where it's usually put. And then what you do is you suggest it to the people who are your most important readers. And if they go for the idea too, then you have permission and you can play with the changes that you want to make in the standard setting. Once again, you can look into the ones I did. I didn't judge them according to whether or not they were well written. I was judging them from how they were organized. But you'll see that the two on the far end kind of bent the rules a little bit. I outlined it in yellow. The social class and organizational sciences as a meta-analysis. It's a different kind of research, and it wasn't organized in chapters. And most of the analysis it put in the appendices. Meta-analysis has its own peculiarities. And then an example of taking an idea and dividing it into 2 chapters was the architecting team performance using information quality theory. Because the theory was so important to that man's piece, he divided chapter 3 into 2 sections. One that separated the theoretical component from the rest of the methodological components. So once again, follow the structure, analyze what others have done before you. I recommend 5 models, one that's your university, one that's your topic, one that's your methodology, one that is just really well written, you just like it for some reason. And then if you can find any award winners, look up scientific awards, look up things in your field, go to the conferences or look up the conference results in your field. They often give awards for very good work that are within your field, and then do some analysis. And then decide where you're going to start your ship. Because y'all might not want to be award winners. You might just want to get done and move on with the rest of your life. That's a perfectly fine outcome. You might not want to have to do 200 pages if you can do 150 or 100, if it's acceptable within your university. These are the ideas you should be working with as you chart the waters that you'll be sailing through. Adrian found this map, your PhD thesis template, that helps visualize how each piece of a PhD thesis fits together. Excellent document. I hope you all, it's in the chat. Thank you, Adrian, for giving it to us. And I'll pass it on to Margie for the 365s as well. Anything else? There are lots of ways of looking at this work, but this will help you sort it out for yourselves. Useful, interesting, and raise your hand if you have any questions. Because now we're going to go into the rule breakers. Okay, Philip, I'll wait till you write your question up. So we do, as Philip's writing, as we write as authors, we should think of ourselves, and we want to get our, it's a self-promotion piece. We have ideas, we work in a world where our ideas need to have some traction. So we write in different kinds of ways. And as Philip puts up his question, the next thing we're going to do is, yes, Philip, there's the document that is in the slides. Good question. Would somebody clarify for me in the handouts, do you have an Excel, or is the, I don't think a CSV would have 4 sheets. Do you have an Excel that has 4 different sheets in it? If you don't, before we go, I will upload it. Yeah, very nice, Adrian. Yes, you do have. Okay, so the answer, yeah, 4 sheets. Go to the handouts, Philip, and that's where this document is. All right, well done. Moving on. Okay, our 5th snippet for writing from models considers the more difficult models, which are, what do you do when it's a class assignment, when you want to write an essay, when you're stepping out into your field as a thought leadership piece. That might be a white paper. It might have a business tonality to it. There are lots of reasons academics write, and it's actually easier to write a journal article than it is a white paper for most of us, because a journal article has some rules. So once again, we're referring to the resources document. And our reflective question, who's the most important reader of this writing? It depends on the purpose of the writing. So if we're writing essays, then the most important reader is somebody who's going to take those ideas and move on with them, or begin a conversation with them, or if we're part of an online group, take our ideas and move them, or work with us on them, or partner with us on them. So you want your those kinds of writing, you want to have legs, that you want them to be a little inspirational. You want them to develop into something. So if you're writing for those kind of reasons, then your reader expects it to be a little juicy, expects it to be a little provocative. They're either interested in agreeing with you or not agreeing with you. Both have aspects of being positive. They want it to be short and sweet. They don't need to have the same kind of depth, more than likely. They'll come back to you if they want depth, and they hope for provocation more than anything. They want something to play off of. So I just took 3 different kinds here to tease out our conversation, and then Adrian suggesting that a logical critique of some of these might be an interesting way for us to end today. So if you've seen anything in these that you want to tease out, we'll have some time for that. But looking at these are these are published in different kinds of places. The drive team performance using organizational transformation is a HR piece. And so it's a business document. They have a particular idea about process design. Their point is to encourage people to use process design and to engage with them about it. And so they are selling it in a way. It's all very positive. It's not, it's short. They tell us where they're going. They get us there, and they tell us that it's a good thing and move us on. So, and I think this is what you'll see no matter what our field. If you're in education, the magazines written for educators are usually written like this. Somebody has an idea. Most journalism is written like this. You have an idea. You want people to accept that idea. You put it out there in its logical step-by-step process. The steps aren't all that different from an academic step, but they definitely give us background. They definitely give us the meat of it. They take us down a funnel to where they want us to go. They get us out of there. Another kind of writing are the things that we do when we go to, meaning we, the academic world, when we go to conferences. Conference paper is not, sometimes will be upgraded to be a chapter in a book or a journal article, but it starts off smaller, more direct, a few pages. So one of the things the reader expects is not to have quite so much, but to have enough to ask questions about, to be able to pick it up quickly. This particular one did it in such a way that from the journal article, it's on exercise treadmill testing, from the conference to this article, the headings became more like those pullouts of, rather than a heading background, it was more like the main thought that the background section had. So a pullout more like a magazine uses. But they still covered all the same things. The question, what they found, and then they did it again. They did abstract importance, objective design. So they did it little, and then they did it bigger, and then they did it even bigger still. Third one, software development using an agile approach in space science. And so we had to learn a little bit about space science. We had to learn a little bit about agile development. And then this one went through, and this was also for a conference, and it went through much more like a journal article. So I just bring this up lightly to say to you, not a bad idea when you're reading something and you like it, to just throw it into a spreadsheet like this. Just take it apart a little. Your awareness of what's the field, what's the premise, how they use their headings, whether there was methodology. If there was methodology, was it clear? Did they tell us where they're going, take us there, tell us where we've been, or did they do something different? The more you look at other people's writing, the more you find where you're going. And I want to, Adrian has a good suggestion about people in the room having a conversation. So I'm going to end my part just by saying there are things on our website I highly recommend for you to go to and use if you're going to dig deeper, as you need to dig deeper into this. The box sets under the resources menu. There's a box set on academic writing. There's a box set on research and writing for master's students. There's a box set on critical thinking. On demand, videos, same kinds of possibilities. Box sets will have multiple videos. It's a deep dive into things. On demand will give you some more ideas similar to this to play off of. Both are available that you can download them and then listen to them in the car, listen to them as you're doing other things. And next week's webinar, if you haven't signed up for it, I recommend it, because we're going to take these ideas and then we're going to look at how we personally read literature and pull the literature together for our own writing. So this is the foundation, and next week is the stuff we layer on top of that. With that, I'm going to say enough of me and turn it over to the people in the room. If you've watched by recording, thank you very much. And we hope to see you here next week as well. Okay, the recording's gone.